Right now, Zelensky has bent Lukashenko to his will, the repeaters have stopped working, and in the Kremlin, something has gone wrong. Lavrov has suddenly told the truth. Putin was simply fooled. Trump pulled off this clever scheme while looking the Russian dictator straight in the eye. The Kremlin still cannot accept this defeat. Washington has done the literally impossible. The White House is placing a laurel wreath on Volodymyr Zelensky. Ukraine is moving the war into a new phase. Statements that literally reveal the date when peace will be declared. And all of this happened right now. I am Renata Aslanova. Greetings, and we are beginning. Sensation. The repeaters in Belarus have gone silent. Ukraine was able to pressure Lukashenko. Volodymyr Zelensky, in a conversation with journalists, reported that the equipment that helped the Russians guide Shaheds to targets in Ukraine has ceased its operation.
Whether they were dismantled or not, to be honest, I don't know yet. But we are working on it. And I am closely monitoring the situation and receiving daily reports. Fact. The repeaters are not working as of today.
The tough ultimatum worked. Earlier, Zelensky gave Lukashenko exactly 7 days to eliminate the Russian stations on the border, threatening a crushing response from Ukraine. Radars detected them in 2 border regions. And it seems that the old man got seriously scared. The result is obvious. In recent days, Russian UAVs have not been directed along the Belarusian-Ukrainian border. The independent Belarusian publication Flagstaff also noted this.
For the last 3 days, no flights of Russian strike drones have been recorded along the Belarusian-Ukrainian border. In late spring and early summer of 2026, such flights were massive. Some drones entered Belarusian territory, and UAV movement at low altitudes was observed by residents of border settlements.
At the same time, attacks on northern Ukraine have not stopped. Drones continue to attack the region. They just now enter from other directions, bypassing the Belarusian border. Experts note that this is a serious diplomatic and military success for Zelensky. Lukashenko clearly does not want an open conflict on his land and prefers to quietly turn off Russian aid rather than risk strikes on Belarusian facilities. Could this be a turning point in Minsk's involvement in the war? We are following the development of events. This is a real sensation. Perhaps for the first time in Moscow, it was admitted that Putin was made to look like a fool, an unexpected setup from his inner circle. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov suddenly announced that the Russian dictator was simply deceived during a meeting with Trump in Alaska, where, as the Kremlin claims, certain agreements on Ukraine were reached. But Washington pulled off a clever scheme to buy time for the delivery of additional weapons to Kyiv.
I don't even want to suggest that Alaska, like the actions of the Europeans, was designed to buy time for additional armament of the Kyiv regime. I don't even want to think about it. But in the end, everything turned out the way it did.
And that's not all. The head of the Russian Foreign Ministry complained that after the meeting in Alaska, Washington not only failed to ease pressure on Moscow, but on the contrary, kept old sanctions in place and added new ones. Moreover, the Kremlin recalled Trump's loud statements about the need to achieve a lasting peace in Ukraine. However, they now claim that they have not seen any real results confirming those words. It seems that in Moscow it is becoming increasingly difficult to hide disappointment with the development of events. The United States made the whole world hold its breath and literally bow down before Kiev. Deputy Secretary of State Jeremy Levin stated that Ukraine is now in a turning point phase and is effectively winning the confrontation with Russia. These words were spoken against the backdrop of the Kremlin's growing problems and the successes of Ukrainian forces on the battlefield.
At the moment, we are in a situation where Ukraine is winning the war.
At the same time, the official emphasized that even this winter, Ukrainians managed to change the dynamics because in winter, the Ukrainian military attacked Russian infrastructure inside Russia.
Now is a very important moment. Ukraine can continue to exert pressure on the battlefield.
And here is a key signal straight from the White House office. Donald Trump called Volodymyr Zelensky brave and said that he is doing quite well in the war with Russia.
He's doing fine. Look, no matter how you look at it, he's doing fine. He is at least holding on. Many people are dying on both sides. But I think he's doing fine.
At these moments, the Kremlin is red hot. Putin's inner circle has been discarded. The system has developed a fatal crack. Rumors of high-profile resignations, strange disappearances, unexpected information failures, and more signs of internal chaos. What is really happening behind the closed doors of Kremlin offices, and why is Moscow increasingly talking about problems that can no longer be hidden? All the details in the report below. In the Kremlin corridors, there is once again a scent of personnel panic. For several weeks now, Russian telegram channels have been relishing rumors that Dmitry Peskov may never return from his vacation to the position of the Kremlin's main voice. It is rumored that the longtime press secretary of Putin may be sent far away from Moscow's intrigues into diplomatic exile under the beautiful guise of embassy work. And while Peskov himself remains silent, Russia's information space has exploded with a new version. Supposedly, Dmitry Kiselyov is being considered for his place, a man who for years turned television broadcasts into a factory of propaganda and apocalyptic forecasts for the West. It seems the Kremlin decided that if reality is increasingly difficult to explain, then a specialist with a particularly powerful imagination is needed. Some are already joking that the personnel reshuffles may be related to the fact that lately, Peskov has been appearing too often at various social events and parties suspiciously far from state work. Or maybe the reason is much simpler. In the Kremlin, they traditionally look for those to blame for failures, and when there is no good news, they have to change at least those who voice it. True, for now, all of this remains at the level of rumors and insider information. However, when even the main Kremlin speaker suddenly finds himself at the center of personnel gossip, it may indicate that nervousness in Russian government offices continues to grow. At the center of another conflict was the primary guardian of Russian finances, Elvira Nabiullina. After a mysterious 2-week disappearance from the public space, she has finally appeared at a briefing. But instead of soothing fairy tales about stability, she brought Putin a new batch of unpleasant news. The head of the central bank effectively admitted that Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil refineries could trigger a new round of inflation and deal a painful blow to the economy of the country. It seems that Nabiullina is increasingly saying things that those in the Kremlin would rather not hear. While the propaganda reports on an economic miracle and resilience to the sanctions, the head of the central bank stubbornly reminds everyone of the risks, deficits, and budget problems. The situation with the ruble may be causing a particular sense of irritation. The Russian currency unexpectedly strengthened, but instead of a triumph, this turned into a headache for the authorities. Exporters are losing their profits, the budget is missing billions, and economists are already warning of a multi-trillion hole in the public finances. Against this backdrop, Russian elite circles are increasingly discussing the future of Nabiullina herself. Her term of office is set to end in the year 2027, and rumors about the search for a successor have long since moved beyond the corridors of power. Various names are being mentioned, but the main question sounds quite different. Has the head of the central bank become too inconvenient for the Kremlin? While Nabiullina was once considered one of the most effective managers of Putin's system, now her position increasingly resembles the classic type of Kremlin trap. When the economy stalls, money becomes scarce, and the war demands more and more resources. A scapegoat will have to be found sooner or later. And it is quite possible that such a role is already being prepared specifically for the head of the Russian central bank. The unpleasant surprises for the Russian Federation do not end there. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin received a rather unusual gift for his birthday. While the official was likely receiving more congratulations from his Kremlin colleagues, his Telegram channel suddenly became a platform for completely unexpected political statements. In the feed, one after another, posts in support of Ukraine began to appear, as well as openly mocking messages addressed to the Russian authorities and supporters of the war. These were perhaps the most sincere posts that have ever appeared on the official channel of the Moscow mayor. After a wave of backlash, all the messages quickly disappeared as if they had never even existed. But the internet, as we know, remembers everything, and screenshots spread across the web faster than Moscow officials could come up with an explanation for what was happening. It is particularly symbolic that the incident occurred exactly on Sobyanin's birthday. Instead of festive cards and pompous congratulations, the mayor received a real information firework display. If it really was a hack, then the unknown authors decided to throw him a party in the style of modern Russian reality, with panic, chaos, and a complete lack of control over what was happening. The Kremlin has spent years talking about total control over the information space, but sometimes just a few minutes are enough for the official channel of one of the country's most influential officials to turn into a source of news that makes Russian propagandists clutch their hearts. It seems the Kremlin's main problem today is no longer sanctions or even Ukrainian strikes. The most dangerous enemy for Putin's system is becoming internal chaos, which is increasingly difficult to hide behind propaganda, loud statements, and television shows about stability. And the more cracks appear on the facade of this system, the louder the question sounds. Is everything in Russia really as calm as they say on the screens? At this very moment, the end of the world for the Russian Federation is live on air. The West has pushed the button for the total demolition of the Kremlin. Thousands of super missiles are aimed at Moscow. What the Kremlin considered a distant scenario just yesterday is rapidly taking real shape today. In Moscow, it's becoming harder and harder to hide the growing tension. Every new signal from the West sounds like a stern warning that can no longer be avoided. All the details are in our report.
What the Kremlin has feared in recent years may become a reality. The West is not only not reducing military support for Ukraine, but is also starting to launch production of a new generation of long-range missiles. And if the plans of defense companies are realized, the count could go into the hundreds, even thousands of high-precision weapons for the Ukrainian army. The first wake-up call for Moscow was the news from the Netherlands. There they announced funding for the production of 700 long-range cruise missiles by the company Destinus specifically for Ukraine. And this is just one program. At the same time, reports continue to emerge about Ukraine's use of new long-range IRAM missiles with a claimed range of over 930 kilometers. But that's not even the most interesting part. According to some estimates, we could be talking about future deliveries not in single batches, but on a scale that will be measured in the thousands. For the Russian military command, such a prospect looks almost like a strategic nightmare. After all, if before one could try to hide warehouses, headquarters, and military factories somewhere far in the rear, now the very concept of safe depth is beginning to crumble. From Belgorod to the Urals, from military airfields to defense industry enterprises, all of this is gradually falling into the zone of potential risk. But the real intrigue is unfolding in Great Britain. Defense giant MBDA reported successful tests of the new crossbow missile drone. And here, what looks particularly painful for the Kremlin is not even the range of 800 kilometers or the warhead weighing 300 kilograms. The speed of development is impressive. From the emergence of the idea to the finished prototype, only 9 months have passed. In fact, the British have demonstrated that modern high-precision weapons can already be created faster than Russian officials can write another report about having no analogs. And crossbow is just one part of a much larger story. As part of the British Breakstop project, several more long-range systems are being created in parallel. For example, Tiger Shark is capable of hitting targets at a distance of up to 1,000 kilometers, carrying a warhead weighing 300 kilograms. And its cost is just over $500,000, which by modern military standards looks like a nearly budget-friendly option. Even more interesting is the Skylens, with a stated range of up to 1,200 kilometers. One detail adds a particular twist to the situation. All these systems are created according to the ITAR-free principle. In simple terms, without American components that could restrict the transfer of weapons to third countries. That is, the British deliberately designed these missiles in such a way that in the future they could be transferred to Ukraine quickly and without unnecessary bureaucracy. For the Kremlin, this is a very unpleasant signal. There are fewer and fewer political levers to block such deliveries. Most symbolic is how the West's approach itself has changed. If at the start of the full-scale war, allies argued even about transferring individual artillery systems, now more often, it's about joint production, multi-year funding programs, and the creation of entire lines of long-range weaponry, specifically for Ukraine's needs. In fact, a new defense ecosystem is forming, where Ukraine is no longer just a recipient of aid, but one of the key centers of future European security. It's funny that Putin started this war under slogans about the demilitarization of Ukraine. A few years have passed and now Ukraine is gaining access to technologies it could only dream of before. The West is launching new production lines, financing hundreds of thousands of long-range systems. And if these programs are implemented even partially, then for many Russian facilities, the coming years may turn out to be significantly less peaceful than the Kremlin is used to counting on. For Russians, night alerts are becoming as much a part of life as morning coffee. Before Moscow could recover from previous attacks, the sky over Russia and the occupied territories was again filled with the sounds of explosions and sirens. It all looked most symbolic in the Russian capital. While officials reported on more successful interceptions, drones flew over the Moscow region one after another. Mayor Sergei Sobyanin spent the night counting new targets approaching the city almost in real time. According to him, nearly 60 drones were allegedly shot down on the outskirts of Moscow. The irony is that the more such reports appear, the harder it is for Russians to believe in tales of the capital's absolute safety. Powerful explosions also rang out in Bryansk.
Whoa, and another one. Holy shit. Damn.
According to local sources, the railway infrastructure came under attack, one of the key arteries through which Russian military logistics are provided. For the Kremlin, this is a particularly painful topic because while generals dream of new offensives, more and more facilities in the rear, they're forced to think not about transporting cargo, but about their own survival. It was just as hot in occupied Crimea. Explosions were heard in several areas of the peninsula at once. The Tavricheskaya power plant near Simferopol drew special attention. One of the key energy facilities that Russia built as a symbol of the final integration of occupied Crimea into its own system. Now, this symbol is increasingly in the news due to damage, fires, and the aftermath of attacks. After previous strikes, burnt-out structures, breaches, and serious destruction were already recorded there. Events in Armyansk unfolded in an even more interesting way. According to preliminary information, the strike hit the FSB border service building near the train station. A fire started after the explosion, and witnesses reported subsequent detonations. When security facilities start blowing up, even the most staunch fans of Kremlin TV shows suddenly start asking very uncomfortable questions about the effectiveness of the entire defense system. Reports of explosions also came from Donetsk and Berdyansk. In the latter, the train station area drew special attention, where a fire broke out after the attack. And this once again demonstrates one simple trend. The geography of strikes is constantly expanding, and the list of facilities that Russian authorities considered relatively safe is rapidly shrinking. So, okay, and what? Am I gonna sleep tonight or not? The final statistics from the Russian Ministry of Defense look particularly telling. They claimed that 301 Ukrainian drones were allegedly shot down in a single night. And here a rather uncomfortable paradox arises. If the threat is truly so massive that they have to report on hundreds of targets over dozens of regions, then Russia itself is effectively admitting. The air war has long since moved far beyond the front lines. And while Kremlin officials continue to talk about being in control, Russian regions are increasingly waking up not to alarm clocks, but to explosions. And it seems that for many residents of Russia, this is becoming a new, very unpleasant reality.
While Russian generals prepare for war with outdated methods, Ukraine is already stepping into the future. What until recently looked like science fiction from Hollywood blockbusters is today gradually becoming a reality on the battlefield. Sea drones are capable of hunting planes and drones with small arms. And now there are also systems that can independently find and hit targets without any operator involvement at all. It seems the war is entering a new era, where the decisive role will no longer be played by the number of tanks or soldiers, but by the speed of technological solutions. All the details are next.
In the Kremlin, they might start nervously reviewing maps of the Black Sea. Ukraine has shown a weapon capable of turning the hunt for Russian aviation into a real maritime nightmare. While Moscow has grown accustomed to fearing Ukrainian naval drones due to attacks on ships and logistics, a new surprise has appeared on the horizon, a drone that can not only swim, but also shoot down planes. Sirena looks like a true next-generation technological predator. The new naval trimaran has received a powerful electronic warfare system capable of simultaneously suppressing communication, navigation, and control channels of enemy drones within a radius of up to 30 kilometers. Simply put, the enemy can lose their orientation even before they realize what is actually happening. But the most interesting part is not hidden in the electronic warfare systems. On board the Sirena, a launcher is installed for AIM-9M Sidewinder missiles, the very ones traditionally used by fighter jets to destroy aerial targets. And this is where the particularly unpleasant part begins for Russian aviation. Because now the threat can lie in wait not only in the sky or on the ground, but also in the middle of the sea. The evolution of Ukrainian naval drones itself looks particularly symbolic. Until recently, they hunted ships of the Black Sea Fleet, forcing Russian vessels to leave Crimea. Now a concept is emerging where the sea could become dangerous for Russian aviation as well. If before the occupiers had to look back at the water because of the threat of an explosion near the hull, soon they will have to look there also because of the risk of getting a missile in the air. It is also significant that Syrena is capable of operating for up to 24 hours straight and acting at a distance of up to 800 kilometers from the control point. That is, we are no longer talking about a separate experimental project, but about an attempt to create an entire new ecosystem of naval warfare. And if this concept proves its effectiveness in practice, the Black Sea could become an even less comfortable place for the Russian military than it is now. And it seems that Ukrainian engineers do not intend to stop there. While in Russia, they are trying to come up with another antidote to Ukrainian drones, at the Eurosatory International Exhibition, another development was shown that demonstrates the main trend of this war. Drones are becoming increasingly versatile, and the imagination of Ukrainian designers is becoming more and more dangerous for the occupiers. This new drone can not only deliver ammunition, but also fire from an automatic rifle. Yes, it sounds like a scene from a sci-fi action movie, but such a machine already exists in reality. The developers emphasize that the main idea of the project is to show the versatility of the platform, on which almost any equipment can be installed depending on the task at hand. Ukrainian companies are increasingly demonstrating not individual drone models, but entire modular platforms. Today, an automatic rifle is installed on the drone. Tomorrow, a communication system, the day after tomorrow, a new type of ammunition or electronic warfare equipment. In fact, we're talking about creating a kind of modular war system that can be quickly adapted to any conditions at the front. And this exactly might be the most disturbing news for the Russian command. After all, while the Kremlin is looking for ways to fight already known Ukrainian technologies, new ones are constantly appearing in Ukraine, and often so non-standard that the enemy has to come up with counteraction methods only after another surprise appears over their positions. And it seems that the next stage of the war has already begun. While Ukrainian engineers show new drones with assault rifles, missiles, and electronic warfare systems, news broke of a technology that could forever change the rules of the game on the battlefield. We're talking about drones that no longer need a human after launch. They search for targets themselves, make decisions themselves, and attack themselves. According to Western journalists, during one of the tests, a group of autonomous drones received only a general area for work. After that, the devices went on a mission without any connection with the operators. No one saw the video from the cameras in real time. No one could intervene or correct their actions. Artificial intelligence independently analyzed the situation, found targets, and performed the mission. In fact, we're talking about a moment that, until very recently, existed only in science fiction novels and Hollywood blockbusters. A human no longer controls every movement of the machine. He only presses the start button, and then the algorithms themselves determine what will happen on the battlefield. For the military, this is a new level of speed and efficiency. However, developers and the military are still very cautious about such solutions. Most modern combat systems with artificial intelligence still leave the last word to the human. That's why in Ukraine at the moment there's a rule requiring the participation of an operator at the final stages of weapon use. Modern warfare is changing rapidly. Until very recently, the main sensation was FPV drones. Then sea drones appeared, which pushed the Russian fleet out of a significant part of the Black Sea. Now Ukraine is demonstrating sea drones with missiles to fight aviation, universal platforms with small arms, and systems where artificial intelligence takes on more and more functions. If today it looks like an experiment, then tomorrow it may become the new norm. Because war has long turned not only into a battle of armies, but also into a battle of technologies. And while Russian generals continue to fight with methods of the last century, Ukrainian engineers more and more often show what resembles weapons from the future. Perhaps right now, before our eyes, a new era of warfare is being born, where the decisive factor isn't the number of soldiers or tanks, but the speed of technology development. And the one who is the first to master this reality will gain an advantage that just a few years ago was considered impossible.
And that's where we'll end our episode. We're continuing right now. We're following the latest news to bring it to you first. Don't forget to subscribe. See you